Around the World Lit Audio. Journey to the West by Wu Cheng'en. Chapter 2. Full narration script. Channel intro. Welcome to Around the World Lit Audio, the greatest novels ever written, from every corner of the world, in English. New chapter every week, free to listen. Chapter recap. In Chapter 1, a stone egg cracked open on a mountain in the Eastern Sea, and out rolled a monkey. He became king of his tribe, discovered a cave behind a waterfall, and ruled his mountain in perfect happiness. Then one evening, he looked at the moon and understood for the first time that he was going to die. He built a raft and sailed across 2 oceans to find the secret of immortality. At the cave of a Taoist patriarch named Zhu Bajie, he was given a name, Sun Wukong, awakened to emptiness. Chapter 2. Chapter 2. Sun Wukong was, by any measure, an exceptional student. He arrived at the cave of the patriarch Zhu Bajie with nothing, no family, no history, no learning, no name. He left with all the names he would ever need, and more knowledge than most beings accumulate in several lifetimes. But the path between arrival and departure was not simple, and it began, as most important things begin, with a period of doing very little. The patriarch's cave was home to a small community of students, young men who had come from various places for various reasons, most of them involving a desire to learn Taoism, which is the art of living in harmony with the nature of things. They studied, they swept, they grew vegetables, they copied texts, they meditated, they asked questions and received answers that were often more questions, which is the nature of genuine teaching. Sun Wukong swept and grew vegetables with the rest of them. This was not what he had sailed 2 oceans for. He had sailed 2 oceans for immortality, for the specific, practical secret of how to live forever, which he imagined would be handed to him in the form of a technique, or a pill or a formula, something concrete that he could apply immediately. Instead, he was given a broom. He swept. He swept with the thoroughness of a creature who does everything thoroughly, and he watched the other students, and he listened to everything the patriarch said during lessons, and he waited for the moment when the real teaching would begin. Weeks passed. Months passed. Sun Wukong swept and grew vegetables and meditated and waited. After 7 years, the patriarch called him to the front of the class. He said, "You have been here a long time. What have you learned?" Sun Wukong thought about this carefully. He said, "I have learned to sweep. I have learned to grow vegetables. I have learned to listen. I have learned that I do not yet know what I came here to learn." The patriarch looked at him for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He reached out and tapped Sun Wukong 3 times on the head with his staff. Then he clasped his hands behind his back and walked away into the inner chambers of the cave, closing the doors behind him. The other students looked at Sun Wukong. Sun Wukong looked at the closed doors. He understood. That night, at the 3rd watch, the deepest part of the night, when the other students were asleep, he rose and went to the back door of the cave, which the patriarch had indicated by clasping his hands behind his back, hands behind the back door, 3rd watch, 3 taps, and entered. The patriarch was waiting for him. He said, "So you understood?" Sun Wukong bowed deeply. The patriarch sat down and regarded him with the expression of a teacher who has found, once in a long career, a student worth the effort. He said, "I will teach you the way of immortality. But first I must ask you something. There are 360 forms of magic in the world. Which path do you wish to follow?" Sun Wukong said, "Whichever path leads to immortality. I have no preference among paths." The patriarch said, "I will teach you the 72 earthly transformations." Sun Wukong bowed again. The patriarch leaned forward and whispered the secrets in Sun Wukong's ear, whispered them in the way that real knowledge is always transmitted, not through texts or lectures, but through direct transmission from one mind to another. The way a flame is passed from candle to candle without diminishing the first. Sun Wukong listened with every part of his attention. He had been waiting 7 years for this moment, and he was not going to waste a syllable of it. He learned the 72 earthly transformations. The 72 transformations were exactly what they sounded like. The ability to transform into any of 72 different forms. A bird, a fish, a tree, a rock, a building, a person, an insect the size of a pinhead, a giant large enough to reach the clouds. Any form that existed in the world, Sun Wukong could become. He practiced. He practiced with the focused obsession of a creature who has found the thing he was born to do. He transformed into a pine tree and back. He transformed into a fish and swam in the stream outside the cave and back. He transformed into a sparrow and flew to the top of the mountain and back. Each transformation was smoother than the last, each return more precise. The other students watched with unconcealed envy and unconcealed delight, the particular combination of emotions that attends watching someone do something extraordinary in front of you. One day, showing off, and Sun Wukong was, it must be said, constitutionally incapable of not showing off. When he had something worth showing, he transformed into a pine tree in front of the other students, and held the form for longer than was strictly necessary, rustling his branches with what can only be described as smugness. The patriarch appeared. He looked at the pine tree. The pine tree looked back, which pine trees do not normally do. The patriarch said, "Stop that." Sun Wukong transformed back immediately. The patriarch said, "You have learned the transformations well, but you are showing them off in front of the other students. This will cause trouble. You are not yet ready for what you know." He paused. He said, "I am going to teach you something else, something that will complement the transformations." The cloud somersault. The cloud somersault was the ability to leap from cloud, to travel, in a single somersault, a distance of 108,000 li, to go, in other words, from one end of the world to the other in a single bound. It was not flying exactly. It was something more specific than flying, a directed leap of impossible distance, controlled and precise, that made the concept of distance essentially meaningless. Sun Wukong learned the cloud somersault in an afternoon. He stood outside the cave and leapt, and the world blurred and he was somewhere entirely different, and then he leapt again and was back. He did this several times with the pure physical joy of a creature discovering what its body can do. He was, at this point, essentially unstoppable. He had the transformations. He had the cloud somersault. He had 7 years of Taoist training. He had the specific, focused intelligence of a mind that has never been told there are things it cannot understand. He was perhaps the most capable being on earth who was not a god, and possibly more capable than several gods. He was also, it must be said, not particularly wise. Wisdom is different from capability. Capability is what you can do. Wisdom is knowing when to do it and when not to. Sun Wukong had accumulated enormous capability in 7 years at the cave. Wisdom would take somewhat longer. The incident that ended his time at the cave illustrated this precisely. It was an ordinary afternoon. Sun Wukong was in the courtyard with the other students. Someone asked him to demonstrate the transformations, or perhaps he volunteered. The accounts differ. Either way, he began transforming into various forms, one after another, each one more impressive than the last, the other students laughing and applauding. The atmosphere festive and entirely inappropriate for a place of serious learning. The patriarch appeared at the gate. Everything stopped. The patriarch looked at Sun Wukong for a long moment. Then he said, "Come inside." Inside, the patriarch told him the following. He said, "You have learned what I can teach you. You have also demonstrated, repeatedly, that you are not yet ready to use it wisely. You will leave this place today. You will go back into the world. You will do whatever it is you are going to do, and I have some sense of what that will be. And it will be considerable, and it will cause a great deal of disruption, in heaven and on earth." He paused. He said, "When that disruption comes, and it will come, you are not to mention my name. You are not to tell anyone where you learned what you know. If you do, I will find you, and I will take everything back." Sun Wukong bowed very deeply. He said, "I will never speak your name." The patriarch said, "Go." Sun Wukong went. He leapt onto a cloud and somersaulted back across the ocean to the mountain of flowers and fruit in a matter of moments. The journey that had taken him years on a raft now compressed into a single bound. The world was very small, when you could cross it in one leap. He landed on the mountain. His tribe was there, older now, thinner, some of them with injuries he had not seen them with when he left. While he had been studying immortality, his people had been suffering. A demon had moved into the area during his absence, and had been terrorizing them, stealing food, bullying the smaller monkeys, making the mountain unsafe. Sun Wukong felt something that was not quite anger. It was more specific than anger. It was the feeling of a person who has been away and returned to find that the place they left needed them, and they were not there. He would fix this. He went looking for the demon. The demon's name was the Demon King of Confusion. He was large and confident and had not, it is fair to say, expected the monkey who came to confront him to be anything other than a monkey. He was wrong about this. Sun Wukong transformed. He expanded until he was the height of a mountain. He reached behind his ear, and here we must pause, because for the first time in this story, the weapon appears. Behind Sun Wukong's ear there was a needle. It had been there since the patriarch had given it to him, a small iron needle, barely visible. When Sun Wukong reached behind his ear and removed it, it grew. It grew to the size of a staff, an iron staff, perfectly balanced, perfectly weighted, with golden bands at each end. It was called Ruai Jinggu Bang, the as you will cudgel, and it weighed 13,500 pounds. And it obeyed Sun Wukong's will absolutely, shrinking and growing, and striking with the precision of an extension of his own intention. He held it. He had not held it before this moment, but it fit his hand as though it had been made for it, which it had, made in the depths of the Eastern Sea, used by the Dragon King to measure the depths of the ocean, left there because no one could lift it except the one it was meant for. The demon king of confusion looked at the monkey holding the staff. Then he ran. Sun Wukong caught him. The fight was brief. The demon was strong. Sun Wukong was stronger, faster, more inventive, and armed with a weapon that could be any size he needed at any moment. It was not a contest. It was an education for the demon in the difference between being powerful and being capable, which is a lesson that painful to receive and impossible to forget. The demon was defeated. The mountain was safe. Sun Wukong stood on the peak of the mountain of flowers and fruit with his staff in his hand, and his tribe cheering around him, and the entire world spread out below him, and felt something that was close to satisfaction. He had come home. He had protected his people. He had his weapon. He had his transformations and his cloud somersault, and his immortality techniques still to fully master. He was ready. For what, exactly, he was not yet sure. But the universe, he suspected, would provide something worthy of him. He was right about this, though what it provided was somewhat more than he had bargained for. But that is the next chapter. Chapter Transition. You have reached the end of Chapter 2 of Journey to the West, by Wu Cheng'en. In Chapter 3, Sun Wukong decides he needs a better weapon, and goes to the bottom of the Eastern Sea to find one. He visits the Dragon King's palace, refuses to be impressed by anything, and acquires the as you will cudgel. Then he decides he needs armor to match. Then he decides he needs a title. And then he goes to the underworld to cross his name off the Book of Death, because if you are going to live forever, paperwork matters. Chapter 3 is available next week. Subscribe to Around the World Lit Audio so you never miss a chapter. A new chapter arrives every week.